Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he mentioned in his book, The Strangers, the book called The Strangers, he quoted a hadith, a very interesting hadith from the Tabarani, who reported with a weak chain of narration on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned, and verily from its signs, means the hour, is that the believer will be in the sight of his tribe more lower in terms of status than the young sheep. Basically, the hadith indicates, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he mentioned in his book about the hadith, that it talks about people who would come at the end of the time who will be very, very lower in terms of their status simply because these people are believers. Now, this word I want you to focus on is not Muslim. Rasulullah did not mention that this is the case with a Muslim, a man whose name is Muhammad. Rasulullah is not talking about that person. He's talking about a believer, a mu'min. So this mu'min, his status in the eyes of the people in his tribe or in the society, in the community, wherever he lives, it will be so lower that he would be worse than the young sheep. And why is that? There are few things. If you look at the mu'min, I'm not talking again about Muslim who is clean, shaved, or who goes to the masjid only maybe for Friday prayer. I'm not talking about these people. This hadith is talking about a mu'min who has beard. So basically, his status will go down as he would try his best to follow the Quran and Sunnah. Subhanallah. So in other words, the more he tries to refer to the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, the more he tries to adhere to the hadith, the less people will respect him. And in fact, in today's time, if you take a look, dear brothers and sisters, the people who are really elevated in terms of social status are the people who do not follow Quran and Sunnah, people who follow the worldly knowledge. For example, somebody who is who has a PhD or who has a degree, like let's say in mechanical engineering or accounting or some kind of other degree. That person, even though he has never opened the book of Allah Azza wa Jalla, he has no knowledge of Islam or understanding of the deen. Nevertheless, when it comes to raising status, so for example, let's say these people are having a gathering, right, a social gathering. So on the stage, who will be called? The guy who has the worldly PhD. This guy will be elevated. His status will be praised. His people will give a good introduction of him, that this guy, we have this honorable guest. But the Muslim, not again Muslim, sorry, the mu'min, the believer who is also in that gathering, will get no status. This mu'min will have no status. People will look down on him. They will think, well, this guy really doesn't know anything about the world, how it works. He has no idea what is going on. He is so miserable. He is so lowly. People will just ignore him, and every time he will try to talk, people will brush him off. In other words, this guy in that gathering will have no status. It will be exactly the opposite. So, dear brothers and sisters, Rasulullah, he is saying that this will be the case. It is from the sign, it is one of the signs of the hour, means the Qiyama, that this thing will happen. For example, in today's time, you have sisters who are wearing niqab. In fact, the UK Prime Minister right now, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he mentioned a very interesting thing about the sisters who wear niqab. He said these people, the sisters who wear niqab, he said these people, they look like letterbox. Subhanallah. I mean, this is how derogatory that comment was, that this woman who are wearing niqab looks like a letterbox. You have people also, subhanallah, in his book, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he mentioned about other people. For example, it is recorded in Musnad of Ibn Ahmad that Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu anh, he said to one of his companions. Now Ubadah is talking to his companions. He said to him, "It is eminent that should your life be prolonged for you, you will see a man who recites the Quran upon the tongue of Muhammad, repeating it and displaying it. allowing its halal and forbidding its haram. He will then be lowered in the status, and his position will be neglected among you and considered just as the position of a dead donkey. Subhanallah. This kind of people will come at the end of the time, one of the signs of the day of judgment. And Ubadah ibn Samit, he is telling his companion, he's already foretelling what will happen in the future. And dear brothers and sisters, this is exactly what is happening right now. That this person who had allowed what is halal and forbid what is haram from the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, his status goes all the way to the bottom. His status tanks, right? People will think that this guy has no idea. I mean, if you let's say if you go to a person, right, and you give him advice about finance, for example, and you tell him that, hey brothers, look at me, brother, do not deal with riba, okay? You go and tell him, do not deal with riba because this is not permissible in Islam. Do not buy a house on mortgage, and do not open this business because this business is haram. What do you think this person will reply to you? He will say, you are crazy because you have no idea how riba works. You have no idea how economy works. You have no idea how hard it is for me to get a loan from the bank. So instead of listening to his advice, the advice of a mu'min, the other person will mock at him. He will joke, and in fact, the next time he sees him, he will be running away from him and telling people, hey, don't go close to this guy. This guy has no idea, he's the dumbest guy. Do not take any advice from him. And this is exactly what Ubadah ibn Samit is referring, and Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he mentioned in his book, he quoted from one of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that they actually foretold us the situation of a mu'min, what will happen in the future. And he actually said that among you, and consider just as the position of a dead donkey. Like our position as a mu'min, the position of a mu'min in the society will be like worse than a dead donkey. And similar to this is a saying of Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anh. He said, there will come upon the people a time in which the believer will become lower than the bondmaid. Means he will be worse than a slave. I mean, a slave has no knowledge, he has no idea what is happening, he has no skill other than just listening and following his master. And so the Sahaba, they already warned us what will be the situation of a mu'min, of a believer at the end of the time. We do talk about the coming of the Dajjal, the Mahdi, and the end of time, the Qiyama that will take place. Dear brothers and sisters, it is so true. It is so true these days that anybody who do not have a boyfriend or who do not have a girlfriend will be questioned about his ability to attract anyone. What I'm saying is that if a guy has no girlfriend ever in his life, or if a girl of a sister that never had a boyfriend in her life, people will doubt their ability to actually be masculine or feminine enough to attract the opposite gender, and they will think, well, something is wrong about this person, why he doesn't have a girlfriend or why she doesn't have a boyfriend. People will doubt, and they will think of this person. I mean, these days, if you talk about virginity, or if somebody comes and says, I never had sexual experience in my life, if anybody says that these days, people will be looking at them very, very strangely and thinking, wow, so something must be wrong with this person. But the moment he or she will say, yes, I have a boyfriend, yes, I dated this guy, I dated that guy, their status, oh my God. So you have the charm, you have the skill, you have the charisma, you have everything all of a sudden. But the guy who never dated anybody because he feared Allah Azza wa Jal, or the girl, the sister, they will be looked down upon, and they will be called as a very lower person who has no idea about how relationship works, who cannot attract anybody, who can never get married and never be able to have kids, or never be able to have any kind of relationship in their life. And also at the same time, they will think that, well, this guy's his intellect, there is a deficiency. So dear sisters, there are a lot of things that we are seeing as believer when we live in our societies, that people think we are actually lower than this dead donkey that the Sahaba Ubadah ibn Samit he mentioned in this hadith. So again, if you find yourself to be that dumb person, quote unquote, do not give up, do not get disappointed, do not feel embarrassed, do not have any kind of shame, because if you have shame of Allah Azza wa Jal, if you have shame in front of the angels, that's what matters. It doesn't matter who is telling you intellectual, who is telling you you are a smart guy, or who is telling you are a clever person, you are an intellectual or you have intellect. It doesn't matter. What matters at the end of the day is what Allah Azza wa Jal is calling us. But nevertheless, this is one of the signs of the end of time. Rasulullah SAW he mentioned, and I have quoted this again from the book of Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, and he mentioned this amazing trait of a believer in his book, The Strangers. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing, like this video, share this video, leave your comment, and inshallah I will see you soon again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.